Good morning. Today there's a nice little opportunity for us for our sunrise stroll and chat. Our Spanish team is filming part of the programming for the upcoming spring pilgrimage on prayer. And this morning they are doing this early hour of adoration outside. They've started at 10 to 6, so it was still quite dark. But you know, it was a good 35 minutes before 40 minutes before sunrise. So they have had that beautiful opportunity to capture that change of light. Someday we'd need to do an hour-long stroll and chat for you to see the whole process of dawn. Maybe we should do that sometime. Like an extra special hour-long sunrise stroll and chat. And this is also very appropriate this morning for our themes of the readings, because the big theme this morning is the temple. And it's the theme of Hannukah, the rededication of the temple. And that obviously has its prehistory of the desecration of the temple done by people who did not respect its purpose. And then we have this, first of all, original temple where glory is given to God in all of creation. Then we have such variety of physical structures called temples, places of prayer and worship that have been built by many different faith communities. We think of the great temples in Egypt, built by the Egyptians, which surely, because of their incredible development, seem to have really shaped also the development of the temple in Jerusalem. And we have right up to our Ducan Altum, which has its own creativity right here in front of us. A very special architectural space to prompt our devotion and our prayer. But then we have the original temple of creation. And actually much of our liturgical structure in the calendar is also related to the natural temple in a way where we receive so many blessings from God. People go to temples for blessings, but already we receive so many blessings from God in creation. And then we have many of the feasts of religious sensitivity are based around natural sensitivity, because the human being is a religious person. That means we have the capacity to connect the whole, to connect with the author of the whole, of all of creation. And so we look up into the dome of the sky, and it's no wonder that the dome became a major theme in sacred buildings. It became a miniature heavens to represent that great authority and power of God. In times of secularization, in the modern period, with the rise of deism a few centuries ago, then all the big secular buildings like the Washington Capitol, or there are many others around the world, especially in Europe, that represent the supreme authority of the state. And so that comes clearly from the dome of the sky. See there to the mountains of Lebanon, across the Syria to Jordan, and we look up and it's one big dome. I can't show you the whole dome of the sky with my little camera here, but you already know what the dome of the sky looks like. And under this dome, we recognize the author of creation, the author of all we do, and all we have and all we are. And so at sunrise is a special moment that changes everything from darkness of night to light of day. And therefore the soul is very touched and willing and wanting to pray. And then different rituals and practices, and the harvest feasts and the times of sowing and the solstice, all of these realities, the human heart was touched. Poets are touched, songwriters are touched, and people of faith are touched. So then the biggest development after the temples then really is especially happening also around the time of, after the time of the original Hannukah, the dedication of the temple in Jerusalem. This was the interiorization of the temple, that we are temples of God. Destroy this temple, in 3 days I will raise it up again. And each of us a temple of the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit dwells in us. And so then the very fact is that we don't need the dome of the sky to pray, and we don't need the buildings to pray. Inside our very heart, we're a temple where God lives. A temple to be raised up forever, even when destruction hits this temple that we are. So I'd love to just go through a little detail of the text, because it actually matches the time we're in. And we have, I think it's on the 7th of December this year, is the feast of Hannukah, but the description is given to us in today's first reading in our liturgical calendar. And they set out to rededicate the temple. And it's early in the morning on the 25th day of the 9th month. That is the month of Kislev. And actually we're in that month right now on the Jewish calendar. And how are the months established? By the moon. And the beginning of the month is the new moon, and the middle of the month is the full moon. And so you have the waxing of the moon and the waning of the moon. And so the month of Kislev, we're probably in about day 11 of Kislev today. And then on, it's pronounced Kislev or Chislev, depending on which language you're using. And so we have another, today's the 11th of the month, so the 25th of Kislev, and it's just another 2 weeks exactly to Hannukah. So it's the 25th, so there you see how that's all calculated, how it all works out on the calendar. I found it striking yesterday, because we'll all be aware of Hannukah in many countries because of the candle lighting. And this is all also tested and tried today very deeply in humanity, with an emerging, in the context of all this conflict, new expressions of hatred, new expressions of disregard for the others, which is something horrible, something so anti-human, something so inhuman, something so despicable. Naturally, all of us are burdened also by our own histories, by our own difficulties. And there's the destruction of the human temple in our hearts, the damage to the temple. And we see in this celebration then in Jerusalem, they're rededicating the temple with songs and harps and flutes and cymbals, and they're putting up adornments on the temple, bringing offerings to the temple. It's the year 148 in the account of the Maccabees. I didn't do my homework to see which year exactly that is in our calendar structured with the birth of Christ, before Christ, after Christ. And we know Jesus was born 4 to 6 years before Christ. That's a nice little puzzle for people because, well, that's a whole other story we don't need to go into now. So we stay on our topic. And then there's another very interesting statement it makes here. For 8 days they celebrated the dedication of the altar. Why 8 days? And it's 8 days for circumcision. And 8 days becomes a very important concept for Christianity. And we have 8 days of Easter and 8 days of Christmas, the octave. See, we're all very deeply rooted and connected in a great history. To have understanding of that and respect for that and respect for each other is a very important feature that our world needs today. It's a time when we need to make a statement in respect of others, in respect for the Hindus, for the Buddhists, in respect for the Muslims, in respect for the Druze, for every religious community. That doesn't mean we endorse and agree with everything they state and the worldview they have, but we have respect for the people, because each person is a temple of God. And how can I claim to be a faithful, religious, devout person if I disrespect the other human being? If I disrespect nature and creation, that God gave us the original place of his evidence of blessing to us, of where we experience his blessing, his goodness. They ornamented the facade of the temple with gold crowns and shields. They repaired the gates, the priest's chambers. They furnished them with doors. There was great joy among the people, now that the disgrace of the Gentiles was removed. And then they decreed that the days of the dedication of the altar should be observed with joy and gladness. The leader now of the people is Judas Maccabeus. Just a little side note there. That obviously became a heroic name. And as I told you before, right here in the Franciscan site, you see that tower is 2nd century Roman. But actually the archaeology in there is also going back to precisely the Maccabean time, to the 2nd and 1st century before Christ. It's called Hellenic time in terms of archaeological categories. A Greek influence which came through from centuries earlier. We often touched on that topic through Alexander the Great, spreading of the Greek Empire. And then that broke up pretty quickly because he died when he was 33. And then we have the time of the leaders of Syria, the Seleucids, and then they came and dominated here, or they inherited the dominion over here. And then we have the conflict with the Maccabees, who rise up and dispute the oppression of the particular religious faith of the Jewish people. So then they decreed that this anniversary should be celebrated for 8 days every year in perpetuity. And that's the origin of the Feast of Hannukah, which will be celebrated in 2 weeks' time. And just it's in my heart to suggest that in this time of great convulsions in relationships between peoples and judgmental attitudes without knowing all the circumstances, that we advocate great understanding among each other, that we advocate patience, that we respect every human being. We know we need to respect the person who is disabled, the elderly, the unborn, the Down syndrome, the mentally challenged, the people who need to be brought under a certain type of controlled environment because they've lost it, the criminal who's a real danger to life of others. We need to have respect for every category of people, not just for the people who are nice and well dressed and cook good food and entertain us and flatter us. A respect for everyone. And maybe that's a good conclusion for all of today's readings and conversation, that because each one of us is a temple of God. And God has extraordinary patience with every one of us. And our time, it's particularly tried and tested and trod underfoot the dignity of the human person in so many different contexts. So let's leave it like that for today, people. May the Lord bless you and keep you. And here's our little selfie moment for today. What happened? There we go. God bless you. See you later, alligators. Have a wonderful day.